Haze, she promptly responded, adjusting her flag pin and standing resolute. Haze Borden, my father and I truly believe this reform will lead to a cleaner environment we can all get behind. Her eyes narrowed in an unnervingly calculating way. Can I expect your vote this coming Tuesday? She continued, golden hair tied back so tight it might rip off her scalp, navy blue suit bulking out her shoulders. I stuttered, glancing behind me into the manor. Sure, Miss Borden, I guess. Oh, well, you don't seem very certain. She tilted her feet toward me to show that she wasn't going anywhere. The campaign party continued on past her. Borden 2016, re-election for your protection, was splashed across countless banners. I fumbled. I'm just here for a few days. The millennial vote is very important to passing this bill. She folded her hands in front of her. Are you registered to vote in Nebraska? Well, no. I nervously glanced around, wilting under her stare. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I'm not really into politics. She readjusted her stance, playing off her change of tactics casually and smoothly. Well, neither am I really. She leaned closer as if to make her next words a secret, but clearly projecting them for everyone to hear. My father's re-election is something I'm personally invested in, of course, but this environmental bill, the change it stands for, well, you don't need to be into politics to understand the good it will do. She smiled warmly, but my dread just grew. This wasn't some Greenpeace worker I could just casually walk away from. This was the freaking governor's daughter. I didn't even know what the heck bill she was talking about. She couldn't have been a day older than me, but she was clearly more mature. What was she, 17, 18? How the hell did people become so frighteningly adult? Right. I tried to seem at least semi-competent as I tried to weasel my way out and get her to continue on. Thank you, Haze. Miss Borden. I totally agree. I'm sure your friends will as well. She nodded, gracefully stepping over my stumbles. Perhaps do some research about the bill and talk to them about it. I'm sure you understand the power your generation holds. And we will wield it just so correctly. I nervously laughed, cringing back. I will do that. Thank you. She cocked an eyebrow as if stifling a laugh. No amount of power behind a facepalm could have conveyed my embarrassment. Certainly, she smirked, as if genuinely amused by this. I suppose if you're staying in the manor as well, I'll be able to check in on you and see if you've done your research. I paled. Kidding, of course, she giggled, putting out a hand. Pleasure to meet you, John. I hastily shuffled to grab her hand, her skin unreasonably cold against my flushed and sweaty palm. Yeah, I nodded. Nice to meet you as well. Good luck with the campaign stuff. Hope the bill wins. I tensed, watching her again unsuccessfully stifle a chuckle before turning around and continuing down the road, shaking hands with more people and smiling. I collapsed against the metal railing, smacking my forehead repeatedly. The rest of the onlookers didn't seem very pleased with my actions either, dirty and confused looks being shot my way. Fuck, fuck, fuck! I harshly whispered to myself between each hit. Why the hell had I even come outside? I wasn't from Nebraska. Why would I bother to watch a rally for some governor go by? I continued to hit myself before sheepishly sinking away from the crowd and stepping into the lobby of the manor. Was that Haze? A voice called to my right, a finely dressed woman coming into view as I turned my head. She slumped down behind a pile of luggage, phone in hand. Oh God, unfortunately. I shook my head, slugging over to her. Aunt Cheryl, I don't think I'm going to be able to visit you guys again. If her dad's reelected, first thing he's going to do is ban idiots like me from his state. She laughed, shaking her head. She can't expect you to be informed about policies in a state you're not from. But I'm not informed about policies anywhere, I slumped. I at least could have seemed intelligent about my ignorance. Oh, frickin' hell. Maybe she'll just forget. A lot of people out there, Cheryl chuckled. I doubt she'll remember you. Not like she'll ever see you again. Not if her family rented out a room here. I waved my arms. God, I gotta hide. What? Cheryl cocked her head. How did you know about that? Know what? I stopped. Wait, that she's staying here? I mean, she told me? Unless that was a joke. Uh-oh. Cheryl cocked an eyebrow. I don't think she's supposed to tell people that. I know I wasn't supposed to say anything. Her grin widened. Looks like she let it slip, she continued coyly, leaning forward. Someone must have left an impression. Ah, fuck. I grabbed at my head. Not a good one. And Cheryl, how long are they staying? 3 nights is what Mr. Borden's agent said. She looked up thoughtfully before snapping back to me and shaking her head. But you can't tell anyone that, okay? Right, I mean, security reasons, I guess, probably. I sighed. Well, it's a big manor, lots of rooms with lots of different people. I'll be fine, unless I'm cleaning her room. Maybe, maybe not. Cheryl grinned before jutting to her feet as her phone went off. Yes? She answered hastily, walking towards the front door and haphazardly waving me goodbye. It's about time. Yes, of course there's a lot of luggage. Yes, I need both of you. I breathed out a sigh, walking heavily up the master staircase to the 2nd floor. I took a few seconds to marvel at the massive glass chandelier dangling precariously above the lobby, as I did every time I walked up the steps. Today, its grand, elegant form appeared particularly mocking. I frowned, then turned to look down at the ornately patterned carpet. It sparkled with golden strands woven around deep red pools, black diamonds etching away into swirly patches of a lighter red. I rolled my eyes at myself, finally reaching the door to my room and making my way inside. Day quickly decayed to grisly sunset, the sky turning a dead black before the sun was even under the horizon. The text on the page of my book was swirling together in incoherent ramblings, as nothing seemed to keep my interest. Predictable or just poorly written, it felt as though I had read this a million times before. Things were looking dismal. I sighed, dropping the pages beside me as I lay on my back and stared up at the ceiling. Several cracks used to crisscross the space, but they must have put a new layer of plaster since I had last been. The surface was now boring and smooth. I sat up with an exaggerated grunt, looking to the old wind-up clock. Its surface was faded and speckled with grime, the tarnished silver alarm bells atop it probably older than I was. 2:30 at night. I groaned and flipped back onto my back. Damn it, I remembered this trip being so much fun when I was younger. Since when did things become so boring? Since when couldn't I sleep? The clock ticked softly, snapping into my brain at random intervals. I guess back then our family wasn't so overworked. Tick, tick. What was once a fun family reunion became all of us taking turns slaving over work. Today had been my break day, but I almost would have rather been washing bed sheets or replacing bathroom soap than being alone with my thoughts here. This place had always seemed nostalgic to me, but the longer the clock droned dully in my ears, the more the blank plaster of the ceiling stared back at me. The more I realized that wasn't quite it. This place had been falling into slow decay, rotting before our eyes. Despite funding, slavish work, and my entire extended family's tireless hours spent maintaining this place, it was as if the manor itself resented us. Paint peeled faster than it could be replaced, the wood rotting from termite damage at an appalling speed, despite several different exterminators pronouncing the place clean. Indeed, we never saw a single bug, but each year entire sections of the attic had to be replaced, boards rotting from underneath guests' feet. Bitterness was the best way to describe the feeling that overwhelmed me here. People spitefully working to death out of some misplaced collective guilt over our grandfather's passing, the manor repaying that spite back in full force. My grandfather owned the manor, but I rarely ever remembered seeing him around. It was mostly his lack of dedication that left the place in such a bad state. The ticking stopped. I blinked slowly. The second hand was snagged on some invisible obstacle, shuddering weakly. With great effort, I slowly stood up and walked over to the clock, giving the warped, dirty glass a soft tap. The hand lurched back to life. The lights above me flickered. My grandfather's passing was pretty hazy in my mind, though it couldn't have been that long ago. The whole thing really felt like a blur, us receiving news of his death on the very same family reunion, him having been missing from the manor for nearly a year preceding it. I didn't remember the funeral at all. Did it ever even happen? I paused, again hearing the ravenous silence from before. I glanced down to the clock to see it stopped again, hand not even struggling now. The stillness within the frame was eerily out of place. My taps at the glass did nothing to disturb its slumber. I curiously picked up the hefty metal chunk of machinery and gave the back several hard twists. Nothing. The bells clattered as I set it back down on the dresser and made a note to myself to bring it to Royce first thing tomorrow. He had a thing for the antiques in this place and certainly was better at fixing things than I was. That's when I began to hear another sound. Or rather, now was the first time I noticed it. In the absence of ticking, I could faintly make out a sort of shuffling. I craned my neck, trying to determine where the muffled sounds were coming from. My eyes carefully scanned the smooth ceiling above me, moving slowly away from the clock and to the far end of my room. The sounds were either getting louder, or I was getting closer to them as my feet quietly dragged across the carpet. Finally, as I glanced out the glass pane window of my room, sudden movement caught my eye, a matching visual cue to the sound. In the faint distance, a tiny, dark figure looked to be driving some sort of stake into the ground. I squinted and leaned closer, gazing down from the second story at their silhouetted form in the threshold between our yard and the yawning dense woods beyond. My eyes narrowed further. That wasn't a stake they were holding. I watched clumps of dirt be sifted away as the person dug again and again. A shovel? The person stooped down after just one more shovelful, rummaging for some time before flinching back and patting themselves down. Their eyes flashed in the dim light from my room as they glanced up. My breath caught as I hurriedly ducked out of view. My blood thundered in my ears, small needles stabbing my skin with adrenaline. My thoughts swirled in a jumbled mess, my eyes staring in absolute stillness at the far wall of my room. Before I finally took a big breath, waited a few more seconds, and then peeked back over the sill of my window. The figure stared directly back at me, standing just below my window. Their eyes gazed up, unconcerned and unyielding, piercing directly into mine. I felt my heart rigidify, a horrified, awkward smile immediately breaking across my face as I flashed pale. The figure's coat billowed softly in the wind. An American flag pinned to her pocket, flickering faintly in the moonlight. Her steely retinas were colorless and dull, a well-practiced, confident smirk plainly on her pale face. Haze. She held my gaze for several seconds, in total control and dragging it out as if to make a point of it. Finally, I couldn't do anything but put my hand up slowly and wave awkwardly, at least giving the decency of admitting I saw her. She, in turn, remained frozen in her expression, blinking slowly, before lifting the shovel from her side and walking away without a word. I breathed out heavily, dropping my head against the glass of the window. What the hell was that all about? What was she doing out? Where the hell did she get a shovel, and should I not have seen that? Fuck, was some kind of Nebraskan Secret Service gonna kill me or some shit? I quickly pushed these thoughts out of my head, unable to keep from laughing slightly to myself at the absurdity of it all. Jesus, of all the people and things to get mixed up in. If Haze didn't remember me before, she would definitely have a vendetta for me now. The lights above me flickered again, water running through pipes overhead with an eerie scuttle. I slumped back down onto my bed with an exhausted sigh, closing my eyes tight and trying to block out my fuck-ups of the day. The room was deathly silent without the clock's white noise, sleep eventually splotching out my thoughts. A knock on my door woke me with painful difficulty. My eyes groggily opened with searing pain as I checked my phone. 5 o'clock. It wasn't even light out yet. I had probably slept less than an hour. "Come on," Aunt Cheryl prompted from the other side of the door. "You already had your day off, mister. Let's get to it." Sorry. I rubbed my eyes, sitting up and wincing. My alarm, the clock stopped running. "Take it to Royce," she responded. "Once you've had some breakfast. Your schedule's on the service counter." Right," I nodded to my empty room. "Thanks, Cheryl." "Sure thing," she cheered. "I'm talking to contractors all day today, so if you or anyone else needs me, you'll have to wait until after 6 or just text me." "Gotcha," I responded, heavily swinging my legs off the bed and getting to my feet. See you later then." Her footsteps receded away from the door, and the sounds quickly muted away as my eyes caught my bedsheets, slush coursing through my veins. Blood. The sheets were splotched with a dark brown rust, almost green in color, it was so decayed. I frantically checked myself, seeing nothing out of place anywhere on my body. My heart rate quickened further, but with changing my clothes it became clear that none of the substance was on me. Was it perhaps just some kind of bleach stain from when the sheets were washed? Taking all of my willpower to convince myself that the stains had always been there, and that I would investigate more later, I jammed a toothbrush in my mouth and hurriedly searched my winter coat. It looked cold out today. The towering mountains daunting the manor were being choked out by gray mist, a light, constant drizzle tapping fingers at the glass of my window. Just as I found my coat, another knock sounded at my door. "Yeah?" I spoke as I took the bulky swath of fabric off its hanger and frantically recovered my bed to hide the stains. "I'm almost there. Sorry I'm late. Slept in a bit too long." The other side of the door was silent. I frowned, having expected it to be one of my family members. I quickly threw the coat on and shoved my gardening gloves into the pocket. I spun around at the last second to also grab the broken clock before chucking open the door. I froze instantly. Haze stood just beyond the threshold, hands carefully clasped in front of her. Her hair was tied back, glimmering earrings dangling softly by her pale neck. She seemed strangely comfortable in her pink dress, the design some weird mix of skimpy and business formal that almost made it appear like she was getting ready for an awkward high school prom. She smiled at my approach, quickly stepping forward to greet me. "I'm gravely sorry," she spoke. "Please excuse my rudeness, Mr. Matthews, but I have a slight favor to ask if you wouldn't mind." I blinked slowly, wondering how the hell she knew my name until I glanced down at the name tag on my uniform and winced. "Oh," I shook my head. "You're not interrupting at all, Miss Borden. Sorry, I thought you were someone else." "Oh, please," she laughed. "It's Haze. I gather you work here?" "Oh, absolutely," I nodded, trying to make up for before by giving this conversation everything I had. "I do general service around the manor. What can I do for you, Haze? You look great, by the way. What's the occasion?" Shit. Was it okay to say she looked great? Beautiful? Stunning? Was that weird to say to someone like her? Holy shit, she was attractive. That was just an objective fact. I shouldn't have mentioned her physical appearance at all. Fuck. I appreciate that, she laughed warmly. For a fundraiser, actually. As per usual, I'm afraid it's never too early in the morning to beg for money from old people. Oh, I chuckled. I'm sure you'll get to talk all about Bill 47A, just non-stop. Get that crap ton of solar panels up in Lost Creek. Haze paused, words disappearing briefly as this seemed to throw her off her plan. I imagined she had this entire conversation scripted out, and to see her taken off guard was something I honestly never expected to see. "You did your research," she finally smiled, the action appearing a bit more genuine than before, as she laughed and put her hands on her hips. "I can't say I actually expected you to follow through with that." "Holy shit, and you remembered me," I wilted. "Oh, goddammit." "Well, of course," she laughed a bit too hard. "Highlight of my day, in many ways." "I don't think you know what the word highlight means," I choked to mask my nervousness. "No, really," she shook her head. "That was a blast comparatively. Most people who know about the bill only follow us around to oppose it. I'm sick of debating the same issues with every single person, arguing the same points to new faces. It's exhausting. It's nice to just talk with someone occasionally, refreshing to see someone so honest." "Honestly inept at politics, maybe," I laughed. "Don't worry about debating points with me. I only learned enough to impress you with that one sentence I said earlier. I'm fresh out of material now. Let's please talk about something else. I like that plan." She giggled, but then seemed to actually hesitate with her next words. "What exactly do you need?" I followed up for her. "I'm more than happy to help, especially now that I'm not petrified of you thinking I'm a horrible blotch on planet Earth." "Right." More warm laughter bubbled from her lips. Well, that's just it, actually. The request is rather strange. I'm sorry if it seems out of line." "Oh, not at all, I'm sure." I shook my head. "Really, absolutely anything I can do for you." As I said that, I found the night before playing back in my head like grainy video footage. Haze stood alone and silhouetted in the dark, hands working a shovel into the ground again and again. The way she had stood and stared directly back at me. "I would like to repair that clock of yours," she continued, softly gesturing to it. "If you don't mind, of course." I paused, not even realizing I had been bracing for impact. That wasn't at all what I expected. "My clock?" I echoed, glancing down to it in confusion, nearly going to hand it to her immediately before I realized it had been facing towards me the whole time. The reality of what she had said suddenly struck me. How the hell did she know it was broken? "Oh, this?" I laughed, holding it up slightly and nervously testing her. "I mean, I guess that's not a really strange request at all, except, I'm sorry to say, it's not broken. It just needs a few wines." "Oh?" She cocked her head, taking a peek at my room number before doubt and worry began to seep into her colorless eyes. Are you sure about that? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I quickly dropped the act, horrified at her reaction. You're actually right, it stopped working last night out of nowhere. I was gonna take it to our mechanic. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, How did you know it had stopped working? I also stole a glance behind myself at my door, reading the number. 12. Haze sighed, eyes again scanning my face with worry caked into her gray discs. Just as I was about to ask her what was wrong, however, she seemed to shake the oppressive feelings away, a genuine smile actually starting to break its way across her face. Well, I suppose there's no harm in being honest with you. She checked behind herself before stepping in close. Way too close for comfort. I felt her shoulder brush mine, my heart giving a pitiful jump before hiding for the next several beats. My skin flooded with red, eyes nervously darting around to see if some Secret Service member was about to tackle me or something. Do governors even have Secret Service, or was that just a presidential thing? Jesus fucking Christ, though, what if Mr. Borden himself saw me with... I'm a paranormal investigator. Haze spoke. A truck could have hit me, filled with C4 and cannonballs, and it still would have been less of a debilitating impact. My face plastered with stupidity, mouth hanging slightly open as I tried to wrap my head around this. Was I supposed to laugh? Was this a joke? Was she serious? What? I finally just stumbled. But paranormal investigator? Like ghost hunters or that thing on Travel Channel? Well, yeah, I suppose so. She nodded sheepishly, sinking back slightly. I must admit I've never said that aloud. Sounds quite a bit more stupid now that I have. No, it's fine. I shook my head. I'm just surprised, I guess. You're serious. That's kind of out of nowhere. I mean, you're... My father and I travel around a lot. She now fiddled absent-mindedly with the lace on her dress. We often stay in very old, historical places. I know it may sound silly to you, but certain places always felt weird to me, strange and kinda sick. I decided in my free time I would try to explain why this was. For 2 years now I've been uncovering as much as I can about the places I visited and the natural phenomena surrounding them. That's... I stretched to grasp at this left-field turn of events, my words dying out. Haze was clearly immediately regretting her decision to say anything, usually confident, stoic face stitched with an embarrassment she couldn't quite cover. That's awesome! I was still in disbelief. What the hell? That's such a freaking cool hobby! Well... It's usually boring when my father travels. She glanced away. I had to find something to do with my off time. Yeah, like read a book or something is what most kids would do. I laughed. But that's so much cooler. You mentioned a natural phenomenon? Are you saying you disprove a lot of stuff people claim, or... I cocked an eyebrow, grinning from ear to ear. Have you seen ghosts? I giggled, not even sure if I was entirely joking or looking for an actual answer. I'm not sure if you're joking or looking for an actual answer. Haze frowned. I kind of feel like you're being a dick, but I also believe you think it's interesting. I was again shut straight up. I think I'm being serious, I finally croaked out. But the governor's daughter just called me a dick, so... I think I probably got some life choice reconsidering to do. The governor's daughter would sensibly call you uninformed or set in your ways. Haze shook her head. I, Haze, called you a dick because you were being a dick. See the difference? I think I like the governor's daughter better, I contemplated. But both of them seem to be avoiding the question, the one I asked in a non-dickish and genuine way. Her cold, colorless eyes narrowed. Also, I continued far more nervously, just let me know when this playful banter actually lands me in trouble. I'm not really sure if this is mutual, this thing we're doing now. I tried to read her face, coming up with nothing at all. My voice continued to rise in octaves as I dug myself deeper into a hole. You can have the clock, I finally continued, positively horrified now. I'll just tell him I dropped it, out the window or something. To watch time fly, she spoke deadpan, reaching forwards and grabbing it softly. What? I didn't hear her last quip. Never mind, I assume the clock is to aid in your stuff? Is this place haunted? It was doing some pretty spooky things last night. How again did you know it had stopped? You'll see. She cocked her head. Okay, that's kinda ominous and not helpful. I laughed quietly. Oh, actually, she suddenly paused. As much as I enjoyed this conversation and variations of it, I wanted to try something else with you. Again, it may seem strange, but it might be helpful. Please don't laugh. Sure? Wait, what? I tensed, unable to keep myself from backing up as she again approached way too close for comfort. What did you just say? And what exactly are you planning on? You'll rot here, she whispered softly, tone shifting to something completely out of nowhere. If you forget everything, remember this, you can be conscious without breaking it. Her forehead clacked against mine as she looked down and grabbed my hand. A pen in her grasp rapidly scratched across the back of my palm. I must escape. The ink was scrawled and hasty yet clearly legible. Suddenly, she twisted my wrist back on itself before slamming it against the wall with a hard crack. I flinched and nearly yelped, horrified confusion invading my face as she finally let go and I wrenched my hand away. Her face was knitted in flushed embarrassment as she quickly did an awkward dance move as if forced to do so by an invisible hand controlling puppet strings. After spinning around with a horrid lack of grace, she finally caught her breath and gave a thumbs up to mask her cherry red face. Do you remember yesterday? She finally spoke as if nothing had just happened, standing upright and recapping her pen. She gazed at me curiously, continuing, How's your arm? Yes, what the heck was that? I certainly wasn't in any danger of laughing, my only reaction confusion and concern. What the heck did you just do? That's a no then, she responded, immediately reinstating her earlier calm, normal presence. If that didn't mean anything to you, forget about it. Yesterday, I tried to humor her in my concern. I mean, yes, I remember meeting you and doing some things around the manor. What was that about my arm? Aside from the fact you just slammed it against a wall. Oh, alright, she nodded. Listen, John, I'm sorry about that. I like to mess with people sometimes. I don't get many chances to let out weirdness. Can you hold on to this pen? She extended her arm to offer her pen to me, an item I took with extreme hesitation after she urged me. And you'll understand how I knew it was broken when we investigate the clock tonight. She looked at me, finally continuing our previous conversation. Deal? I paled. I mean, Haze, once I have free time later, of course. She cut me off. I'll come find you. I'm sure I can speak with management to free up some time. Sure. I mean, that's just my family. I shook my head. I'm sure they'd understand, and I'd love to, but, I mean, are you sure that's... I mean, can you just... Let me ask you, John. What exactly is it you think I do? Haze cut me off. What makes me so different from anyone else? Well, I staggered. I guess I would have to say I imagine you as a scary time bomb-infused emotionless legislative robot whose father will deport me from the United States the minute I step within a few feet. I paused. And you probably have laser eyes, I finished. The ones that make a scary pew 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 ray gun sound. Oh, well, never mind then, Haze nodded. I thought you might have unrealistic expectations, but that all sounds about right. No, I get your point, I laughed. I'm sorry, that must be frustrating. I want to see you as a normal person, but I also don't want to be rude, you know? I'm sure you can do whatever the heck you want. I didn't mean to... I don't know, it's just kind of weird to talk to you, I guess, especially since you're so... I just didn't expect you to be so normal. Normally kind of strange, that is. Which is stupid, I know. She nodded, earrings sparkling. I will talk with management later, she returned, quickly sliding her dress strap back into place as it started to slip from her shoulder. Thank you again for your time. I apologize, my request ran long. I will make it up to you. No. I shook my head, flushing. Really, it's fine. You don't need to even talk to them. They'll believe me. I again felt my face redden as she fiddled with her hair, placing a bobby pin in her mouth as she grinned silently. Okay then, she finally spoke, placing the pin back in place. Let me know if there is anything I can do, then. Enjoy your workday. Right, I snapped back to attention. I'll see you later, I guess. I had to take several breaths to calm my heart after she quickly turned and strode away, heels clacking silently on the carpet. She's a ghost hunter. I had to mutter to myself as I shook my head. Of course she is. Why not? I took another deep breath before hurrying down the main staircase. Clanking dishes met me as I jumped through the sliding door, flinging my hat off the rack and onto my head. Sorry, I flailed, catching several gazes. Miss Borden had some questions for me. I didn't realize it was this late. Miss Borden? Roy slid into view from around the corner, tossing me a single hard-boiled egg. Holy shit, what kind of questions? The embodiment of trailer trash, Royce's trucker hat sat lazily atop his ruffled head, denim jacket torn at the sleeves, while his name tag made him look more like a gas station worker than someone I really trusted to fix anything. His appearance at first glance hardly did him justice, however. The nicest, most selfless guy I'd ever met, not only was he one of the best mechanics in the state, he also showered far too often to fully own his look. One of my younger cousins at 28, he was also one of my best friends during my winters here. Classic excuse. Sylvia waved her soapy hands, clutching steel wool as her pot splashed into the hot water. I don't buy it, cuz. Sylvia was another exception to the general mass of family members I hardly knew. Again, one of very few close to my age. At 18, she was younger than me by a little less than a year. Her deep, green eyes always seemed to carry the heavy weight of worry around with them, her dark black hair straight as an arrow as it fell to her shoulders. A first cousin like Royce, she was closer to me in the sense that she only visited the manor during the winters, while Royce and most of the others were year-round employees. What kind of questions? I hesitated as I caught the egg sloppily and my gloves dropped to the floor. I'm not sure. It quickly occurred to me that Haze almost certainly didn't want me spouting off about her strange hobby to anyone else. It was strange enough for her to just tell me. Had she really never admitted it to anyone else? Sure, it was kind of weird, but to see her so embarrassed about her own hobby was rather heartbreaking. She was just, general room stuff. I shrugged my shoulders. Trouble with the heater and whatnot, I guess, but it's good now. Jesus, well, glad you made it through that. Royce gave a sneering look to Sylvia, who returned it with worry. I probably wouldn't have been able to keep my cool. I hope she doesn't talk to me. She sunk down. God, I can't wait until they just leave. I can't believe Cheryl agreed to let him stay here. Royce nodded. Are we really that much of sellouts? Whoa, wait, huh? I blinked, stepping closer as I cautiously swallowed a bite of the egg. What do you mean? What's wrong with them being here? Well, not them. Sylvia sighed. You're right. I guess it's just her. Haze? I replied carefully. I still don't get it. I mean, I don't know anything about her, but she seemed, nice. Royce looked at me in a way I had never seen before. A sort of confused betrayal that nearly knocked me off my feet. John? Dude? He shook his head. I can't tell if you're joking. Whoa, wait, what? I quickly retracted my last claim. I mean, she seemed a little, I don't know, I don't understand. What's wrong? What's wrong? He raised an eyebrow. You really don't know anything about Nebraska, do you? Her father has taken a ton of flack because of her. Sylvia slowly picked up her dish. She's kinda, heartless witch? Is the least mean thing I can say, I guess? Of course, no one can really prove anything, but anyone with eyes can see she's a compulsive liar. I mean, the things she's done are disgusting. Disgusting? I felt betrayed, trying to wrap my head around this sudden turn. What the heck do you mean? I mean, like, she claims things no one should be able to. Sylvia frowned. Like things you can't take back, and you shouldn't be able to sleep at night after lying about. Leukemia, for example. Royce winced. She has leukemia? My heart froze, further words strangling in my throat. No, she really doesn't, Sylvia hissed. And that's the thing. They won't make the test results public, and it was pretty fucking convenient timing. I can't believe you guys. My mouth fell open. What the hell is the matter with you? She doesn't need to prove it. No one should need to prove something like that. What is this, some conspiracy theory? There's nothing convenient about blood cancer, Jesus Christ. John, man, it's okay. Royce stepped in. You're right. Obviously, no one can be sure one way or the other. It's unfair of us to demand proof, and maybe she is telling the truth. His eyes again glanced nervously to Sylvia. But the fact that they don't make the test results public after being asked to is pretty telling on its own. He looked downtrodden, as if telling me a puppy had died. And she's been proven to have lied about things like that in the past. That's all we're saying. It really feels like her being here is suggesting we forgive her for that kind of stuff. I felt my heart sinking. Jesus, I don't believe it. And somehow everyone seems to freaking forgive her. Sylvia seethed. The media is all over her one minute, but she agrees to do one stupid interview in that slutty dress of hers, and everyone forgets about it the next day. She talks so smooth, you can feel the manipulation laced in, even when she's pretending to be cute and flustered. It's honestly disturbing. God. I shook my head. I don't know what to say. I didn't get any of that from talking to her, but I guess I don't really know her either. I didn't know her. My heart slipped further downwards. Well, either way, Royce tried to lighten the mood. You'll be happy to know Mark got started on the hedges earlier this morning, so your work is already partially done. Cool, then you can help me in here sooner. Sylvia grinned. Too many people using too many dishes in this place. Right. I feigned a smile and polished off the egg. Thanks, Royce. See you soon, Sylvia. I was again alone with my thoughts as I stepped out of the kitchen and into the main lobby. Aunt Cheryl sat on a pile of luggage in my peripheries, clacking away at her phone. I put up my hand to wave before quickly losing the drive. My hand sunk back down as I reached the heavy front doors of the manor. I felt chilling wind rush inside to greet me as I put my whole body weight against the wooden slabs. Snow dotted the outside air, my breath curling out like fog. All was eerily silent, the world wrapped in a suffocating shroud of mist and frost. Only my footsteps dared penetrate the void, crunching softly behind me as I made my way around the property. I rounded the side of the manor, only to feel exasperation and then concern grip me. Gnarled, overgrown tendrils of hedges had begun to splay out in every direction, the ground littered with dead branches now overtaken by live roots. I blinked in confusion. It looked like these plants hadn't been trimmed in years. How the hell was I the first one to do this? Silhouetted mountains in the distance gazed on with indifference, the flakes of jagged, drifting snow already accumulating on the ground. As I gripped my hedge clippers in disbelief, my eyes followed one flake, all the way from the inky sky to the frozen ground where it settled upon. Some upturned dirt. My memory immediately flashed back to Haze last night. I looked up to the manor, seeing the window to my room. Was this the place she had been digging? I began walking closer to the churned dirt, wondering why she had made no effort to hide the location, until a voice suddenly caught me in my tracks. "John!" it cried, dark green eyes barely visible beneath her black hair as her winter hat bounced on her head. "Hey!" I turned to watch Sylvia approach, waving softly before she was finally within speaking range. She bent over to catch her breath, hot, wet air curling in front of her face like vapor. "Sorry," she panted with rosy cheeks. "Gosh, it's cold out here." "A little bit," I nodded, glancing around and nervously stepping back from the hole in the ground. "What's up, Sylvie?" She swallowed hard, breathing finally leveling out. I just want to say that I'm sorry." "Sorry?" I echoed. "About what?" "Well, Miss Borden." Her eyes sunk away. Listen, you know I try not to judge people. I feel really terrible about everything I said back there." "Oh," I shook my head. "No, don't worry about it. You're one of the nicest people I know. You couldn't be mean-spirited if you tried." "Well, I don't know." She bundled her pale hands inside her jacket. "I think I tried pretty hard." "You weren't." I shook my head. "Goddamn, Sylvie, you're too worried all the time." "Well, I guess." She sunk into her jacket. "But I was also pretty mad at you for even talking to her." Her eyes slipped to the ground. "Which is stupid. It's obviously stupid," she sighed. "Obviously you didn't have a choice. She approached you. I'm sorry for getting frustrated. I hope I didn't show it, but I feel bad for even thinking like that. Clearly you wouldn't go out of your way to talk to her now." "Oh, it's okay." I felt my smile slipping. "So I just wanted to apologize for acting unfairly before," she continued, face flushing. I know you thought she was okay, and I don't want you to think less of me for saying otherwise. You know it's not easy for me to hold grudges. I feel dirty hating anyone." "Oh, of course not." I laughed. "I know. Everyone except me seems to have really strong opinions about her. I'm glad you told me." "Right," she breathed out, eyes flashing back to me. "Thanks, John." Silence ensued for several seconds. Wind slashed at our clothing, wind nearly tearing off her hat as my coat whipped around in a flurry. As the gusts finally died down and she was able to open her eyes again, I noticed her looking at me. Really looking at me, as if for the first time in a while. How long have I been taller than you?" She finally spoke, tilting her head sideways with a surprised smirk. "Did that just happen this summer?" I was taken aback, realizing that I was, in fact, looking up at her slightly. Whoa. I stood up straight. You're right, what the hell? I've always been taller than you. Like, way taller. The torch has been passed, she giggled. One less thing you can hold over my head. Literally. She laughed as I frowned. You actually look younger than me now, she continued, going to pat my head. You look like you haven't changed at all since last winter. Since when have you had such a baby face? Oh, very funny. I narrowed my eyes as her hand tapped at my hair. Someone self-conscious of their own old age. Ouch, Sylvia cackled. I'm 18, you ass. I just raised an eyebrow. Cut some frickin' hedges, she hid her smirk. You're not getting paid to stand around antagonizing your youthfully beautiful cousin. I'm not getting paid at all, I rebutted, pulling a giggle from her. Speaking of Ms. Borden, she might have a thing or two to say about these illegal work conditions. I glanced back down to the hedge clippers, the cold metal beaded with jagged frost. You think I get paid? Sylvia laughed. You're preaching to the choir, cuz. I wasn't really listening anymore. A bitter feeling rising in my stomach. Was all that stuff about Haze really true? Sylvia and Royce had no reason to lie. I just still couldn't believe it was that clean cut. My eyes again drifted to the disturbed ground, now cleanly covered in soft snow. Was she really manipulating me by making stuff up? Pretending to be flustered about admitting a weird hobby? I shook my head. That didn't make any sense. She didn't need anything from me. Why spend all that time when I had nothing to give her? I winced. The clock. I had given her the clock. No questions asked. I again shook this off. There was no reason for her to be so elaborately manipulative. Surely she knew I would have given it to her regardless. I clenched the hedge clippers tighter, resolving to believe against all evidence that she had been telling the truth. Sylvia's voice slowly faded back into view as my thoughts ebbed away. Hello? She waved her hand, pointing at the dirt. John? Dude, you awake? What? I shook my head. Sorry. I said, what is that? She again pointed to the hole just behind me. Did you dig that? I turned around to look at it, flinching. No. I quickly stammered. It was just like that. I was actually going to check it out before you ran outside. I don't know how it got that way. I think Joyce was complaining about missing a shovel this morning. Sylvia's deep eyes brimmed with murk, gaze flicking to me. Why would someone dig out here? This isn't anywhere near the power lines. Was someone doing maintenance? Maybe? I contemplated, peering down into the snow. But you're right, we're not near any gas lines either. No one comes back here except us. Must be for some reason. I checked her reaction nervously, watching as she nodded softly in agreement. We stood in relative silence after that, the wind seeming to die down further, being replaced by what could only be described as a soft drone. As if the air itself had begun to softly vibrate, the longer I looked down into the crater, the more nauseous I felt. Hello? Sylvia pushed forward. John, dude, you always zone out this much? What? I shook my head. Sorry. I asked you where your gloves are, she repeated, pointing again to my hands. Aren't you freezing? Oh, I frowned, looking down, having forgotten entirely. It took me several seconds to rack my brain before coming up with the answer. Shit, I continued. I think I dropped them in the kitchen. I began walking back towards the manor, partially to retrieve them, but more so to try and lure Sylvia away from the hole, still fearing what might be inside. She took one last nervous glance before beginning to walk beside me, smiling curiously. "You've seemed a bit scatterbrained recently," she laughed, though I could tell there was some genuine concern laced in, as if this was a test question. "Something going on with you?" "Nah," I tried to match her smile. "Just a lot on my mind, I guess. Plus, my stupid alarm broke this morning, didn't really give me a chance to wake up." "Jesus, again?" she questioned, stepping back as I pried the front doors to the manor open with great effort. "That thing sucks. Has it ever worked? That's like the 8th time this week." What? I cocked an eyebrow, letting her into the lobby before following behind. "I don't think so. It just stopped for the first time yesterday." "I'll grab them," Sylvia nodded over my remark as she jumped slightly ahead. "Do you know where you left them?" She bustled straight past Aunt Cheryl, who sat in the lobby on a pile of luggage. "I think I dropped them," I called after, by the sink." As I tried to keep up, Cheryl caught my gaze, looking up to me and smiling. 3 nights is what Mr. Borden's agent said." She looked up thoughtfully before snapping back to me and shaking her head. "But you can't tell anyone that, okay?" "Huh? What?" I slowly came to a stop. "Right, I mean, security reasons, I guess, probably." I sighed. "Well, it's a big manor, lots of rooms with lots of different people. I'll be fine, unless I'm cleaning her room." "Maybe, maybe not." Cheryl grinned before jutting to her feet as her phone went off. "Yes?" she answered hastily, walking towards the front door and haphazardly waving me goodbye. "It's about time. Yes, of course there's a lot of luggage. Yes, I need both of you." I breathed out a sigh, walking heavily up the master staircase to the 2nd floor. I took a few seconds to marvel at the massive glass chandelier dangling precariously above the lobby, as I did every time I walked up the steps. Today, its grand, elegant form appeared particularly mocking. "John?" a voice spoke, cutting into my thoughts. "Yo, where are you going?" I paused, the chandelier sparking with a dim flash of light overhead. I turned back to look down the steps. Sylvia stood at the base of them, gloves cradled in her hands. "Found them," she called up. "What are you doing? Did you forget something else?" "Oh," I shook my head, walking back down the steps hastily. I'm not sure. Sorry, I think I just got distracted." "Jesus, you've got to stop this." Her smiling eyes twinged with unease. "Those hedges look pretty bad. Not sure what Royce was talking about when he said your work was partially done. I guess I probably can't expect you until after dinner." "Right, well, I'll try and go fast." I hurried my pace to reach her before slowly grasping my gloves from her. "Thanks, Sylvie." "No problem." Her eyes scanned me in depth. "Take care, I'll see you later. Please try to focus a little more. You're kind of scaring me now." She pried at the front doors and held them briefly open for me. "I'm sorry," I nodded, laughing. "But is it even possible for you not to worry? You could try another emotion sometimes. I hear it's kind of what the edgy kids are doing nowadays." She rolled her eyes. "No, really, thank you." I nodded back as I stepped outside. "I'll be fine. You're too nice. I'll see you later." The snowstorm had mutated into a blizzard, my hands immediately flying up to shield my face from the biting sideways needles of frost. I was barely able to make out any features more than a foot in front of me, my body angled towards the howling wind to keep me upright. The minute my footsteps made prints in the snow, the divots were hacked to nothing by the wind, as if I was a specter walking without leaving a trace. It wasn't long before the hole clambered back into view, the buzzing sound leaching into the ambience long before I reached it. This time, my hesitance was lessened, my curiosity leading me closer to the edge, eyes scanning the space before almost immediately landing on something that didn't quite fit. Unlike the uneven terrain around it, something just beneath the snow was smooth and precise. Something man-made. It appeared slightly cylindrical, perhaps a length of tube, maybe exposed piping. Only the top protruded from the snow, covered in dirt. The grating buzzing sound seemed to intensify as I fixated on it. The snow began to slow, not in intensity or volume, but in time, like feathers being dragged through molasses. My legs beneath me left ghostly trails in my vision as I unsteadily walked towards the strange protrusion. The manor in my peripheries was beginning to sink away, dragged back into a veiled darkness as trees and the distant mountains grew indistinct and unfocused. Standing directly in front of the object, now mere inches away, I felt my breathing quicken, my skin beginning to sweat as invisible needles pricked at my flesh. More nausea rose in my throat, and it was far too late by the time I realized all of these symptoms potentially pointed to one thing as I reached down to brush the snow off and pick it up. As soon as the snow sailed into the wind and the tarnished black shell splintered into view, the buzzing in the air became deafening, invisible waves of sickness flushing my skin dead gray. I scrambled, launching the tube with a flailing motion. I flinched back, eyes following the canister as it sailed across the yard. It impacted the ground several feet away with a metallic rattle, spinning several times end over end before sliding to a stop next to the hedges. Whatever this object was, it was radioactive. Saliva grew more and more bitter in my mouth, building to uncomfortable levels as a precursor to the vomit soon to come. The nausea was impossible to hold back, my eyes glancing up to the sky as I tried to breathe deeply, spots of blackness darting through my line of sight like flies. The blades of the clippers scraped harshly at the ice as I dropped them by my side. The atonal hum continued, so constant it rattled my bones, grating, horrible buzzing. Late gray snow fell from the sky, settling on my paling skin. My breaths curled out like ghosts in front of me as I checked my hands before immediately moving them out of the way as I dry heaved, just barely able to hold my stomach down. I glanced to the sinister black casing, its very presence so nauseating it almost felt like evil itself was discharging from it into the surrounding ground. The snow began to coat the black shell again, its body innocently unmoving. Just as I was about to be sick again, a howling gust of wind again dislodged the snow from the object's surface, and it only took half a rotation of the canister before the locked latch came into view, a serial number written just below it. 00385 STYX. There was something inside this thing. Right, I spoke softly, the dishwater so warm I thought it might flay off my skin, the canister still fresh in my mind like a burned-in after-image, Sylvie, the great dishwashing expert, how may I ever have an ounce of your great talent? Well, limiting the sarcasm is a start. She rolled her eyes, hands working next to mine at a pace that made my head spin. Also, her eyes narrowed on a mug in the drying rack, green eyes flashing to me as she cocked an eyebrow. Also, actually washing them is another go-to plan that can't fail. She held up the mug before dunking it back in the water. What? I flailed. That was so clean! The lights around us were dim, the washing area of the kitchen empty aside from us now. Just a wall away in the cooking area, countless voices yelled and laughed as people bustled back and forth. Dinner had just finished up. The sun was choking outside, the dinner dishes gleaming with its final red and orange breaths, stretching shadows long across the dull, tiled floor. How can you even see what you're doing? I continued. There's nothing... My words slowly died out as my eyes narrowed on the water. You actually need to scrub it? Sylvia laughed. You can't see any spots because it's uniformly dirty, which is actually kind of impressive. Yeah, I mumbled, eyebrows cocking as I swished around my hand in the water. Sylvia's words stopped as well, leaning in closer to me as she noticed my weird fixation directly below me. Thin wisps of brown were expanding slowly outwards, the water surface slowly tinting the same rusted color. Oh God. Sylvia pulled her own hands out quickly, knowing immediately what this meant long before I even lifted my hand from the water. I'll get a Band-Aid. What? I felt not even the slightest twinge of pain as my hand broke the surface, snakes of red sliding down from a tiny gash in my wrist. Oh, shit. Catch yourself with a knife? Sylvia just rummaged through the cabinet above us, tipping over boxes in the darkness. Shit, we're gonna have to drain the sink. I didn't feel anything. I frantically moved my hand over to a different sink, running more water over it. The warm water can numb you. Sylvia finally produced a box of Band-Aids, juggling one out of its packaging as she pulled the drain plug. Way to contaminate every dish with your stupid bodily fluids. That was my plan all along. I winced at the amount of blood seeping from the tiny gash, graciously accepting the Band-Aid from Sylvia as she rushed to slap it over the cut. Kidding, of course, she breathed, before frowning slightly and actually thinking. Well, partially, that actually is a huge health risk. My bad. I wiped away water and tried to smooth the Band-Aid down, still looking on in confusion as I didn't feel the slightest stinging despite the rapid decaying of the Band-Aid's white color to a suffocating brown. It's alright, Sylvia shook her head, laughing. But if you wanted to get out of helping me, that's certainly one way. I got it from here. No, it's alright. I flicked my hand to dry it off. I'll just use my other hand, you don't have to do that. Really, I got it, she protested, leaning against the sink as she doused it with cleaning fluid before refilling it with steaming water. There's not much left and I can handle the dessert plates when they come. If you really want to help, you can just hang out, put away the dry ones. Warm liquid lightly speckled my leg. I backtracked with unease. I guess I might actually need to take care of this a bit better. Is that alright? Just go, John. She rolled her eyes with a smile. Take care of yourself for a sec. You're doing spot cleaning on 3rd floor when dessert gets out, right? You can't be bleeding all over the place for that, so make it fast and hurry back. Yep, gotcha. I nodded with a voice trying not to betray my growing panic, having to cup my hand to stop blood from spilling over onto the floor. I'll be back to grab the cleaning stuff. Sylvia was fixated on the dishes, giving a warm, passive nod as I frantically darted out of the room. The door of my own bathroom cracked against the far wall as I flung it open and rapidly put my arm over the sink. The Band-Aid had long been swamped by clotting red liquid, but my world became dizzyingly surreal as I began to watch the gash marks themselves spill from beneath the drowning fabric. The lights above me flickered, the mirror beginning to plaster with frost as I doused my skin with more water. The wound only seemed to grow, but even more than that, it was beginning to look uncanny. Something about this wound, something about the placement and look, reached back at the far recesses of my mind like a meat hook and attempted to wrench something forwards that was meant to be forgotten. The semicircular pattern of the gashes, the deep punctures. This wasn't a knife cut spreading across my arm. This was a bite mark. The water from the sink swirled within the holes ripped clean out, and yet I felt no pain. It was hard to see myself in the frosted over glass, but I could have sworn my reflection bared none of the same punctures. My arm was utterly and frighteningly numb in the face of this ghastly mutilation, my fingers responding to my movement normally despite beginning to look like they were severing from the rest of my flesh. Tendons just beneath the surface softly pooled into view. Then, just as soon as it had begun, the water spiraling down the sink began to clear again, the blood slowly clotting into my wounds as the flesh seemed to airbrush back on itself. The band-aid fluttered into the sink where it promptly got stuck in the drain, the pale skin of my wrist staring back at me where the open gashes once did. Aside from the dried blood staining my arm, it was like nothing had ever happened at all. Suddenly, 3 knocks on my door. A muffled voice called in. My eyes split wide, and I hurriedly rushed out of the bathroom to think of an excuse to tell the door. Hello? I staggered, frantically realizing that I hadn't locked it. Give me a sec. It's Aunt Cheryl, the voice responded. Your room's 32 through 40, alright? We're running a little bit behind. I grabbed your supplies from the kitchen. You ready? I can't really hear you. She tried the handle. No! I hastily shouted out, rushing to my bed and using the covers to wipe away the blood. I'm not ready. Just give me a... She busted through the door as I flailed to throw the comforter over the stained sheets. Ready? She repeated with a smile as if unaware doors were invented for a reason. Your room's 32 through 40. Yeah, gotcha. I sighed. Leave the stuff here. I'll get right on it. Well, please hurry, she cheered. Guests are gonna want to use their room soon. The lights flickered. Yeah, gotcha. I sighed. Leave the stuff here. I'll get right on it. Well, please hurry, she cheered. Guests are gonna want to use their room soon. The lights flickered. Yeah, gotcha. I sighed. Leave the stuff here. I'll get right on it. Well, please hurry, she cheered. Guests are gonna want to use their room soon. Yep. I snuck a glance at my arm to make sure it looked okay before stepping forwards to grab a towel from her nervously. Thanks, Aunt Cheryl. No, thank you, she smiled, quickly turning around and calling over her shoulder in a playful tone. I can't tell you whose room is whose, but maybe you can guess. I was genuinely confused for several seconds before it hit me what she was implying. Wait, is one of them the governor's? I flailed, hissing under my breath. Aunt Cheryl, I'm not sure that's a good idea. She was long gone. My brow furrowed before I quickly remembered I had bigger problems. I took the time to hold my arm up to the light, my eyes drifting along its surface with intense fixation. Especially with the blood wiped away, it was hard to even convince myself that there had ever been an injury there at all. I pressed my finger against the flesh of my wrist, hard, then harder, almost frustrated with its lack of symptoms or evidence. Finally, after beginning to actually feel pain from attempting to stab my finger through my artery, I gave up and let my hand slide away. Had I just had some kind of psychotic episode? Everything had looked so real at the time, or maybe that wasn't quite it. My mind fought against numbness as I tried to recall the fever dream-like episode I had just experienced in the bathroom.
Maybe it wasn't that the blood seemed real, more like everything had seemed incredibly fake. By contrast, the wounds weren't hard to believe, but in the moment, everything from the walls to the mirror to my own limbs felt wrong, almost like plastic, like beyond what I could see. The real world was looking down at this tiny dollhouse in amusement. The feeling made me sick, something I quickly realized I had felt recently before. When I had touched that canister. That mysterious object I had thrown away and left in the snow in genuine fear for my life. Just what was inside? My breaths had finally receded back to a normal rhythm, my head shaking as I first glanced at my empty dresser with the clock no longer adorning its surface, and then to the cleaning supplies. Haze. Did she potentially know something about this? What had she meant when she said I would find out how she knew the clock had stopped? Just what was so important about it? And if she had been digging by that canister, she was either hiding it and the secrets it contained, or unearthing it for the first time in a long while. Neither of those left a particularly good taste in my mouth. I slowly stooped down to pick up the rag I had dropped when looking at my arm. Coming back up, I let out a big breath and grabbed the cleaning cart Aunt Cheryl had left by the door. The handle was stained with blood. I reeled back, only to see that I had been mistaken. The gray plastic was as clean as ever, perhaps tinted red from my ankle by the ceiling lights, perhaps from bounce light from the carpet. Or maybe neither of those. I was being paranoid at this point. Jonathan. A voice snapped my eyes up from the cart as I pushed it into the hallway. I nearly crashed it into her, she was standing so close. Oh, hey, Miss Borden. I straightened, seeing that her appearance had disheveled considerably since that morning. Her dress was slightly off kilter, hair down from its ponytail in waterfalls of unkempt gold. Her makeup was smeared, mascara now simply looking like dark rings around her eyes. She looked exhausted. But more than anything, she looked happy, relieved. There was a childish excitement about her that took me off guard. Are you free? She cocked her head before seeing the way I was looking at her and glancing down at herself. What? She continued before laughing and adjusting her hair carefully. I'm sorry, secret's out. I look like trash 99% of the time. No, I shook my head. You look weirdly somehow more attractive, I thought to myself. Debilitatingly cute? Great, I choked out. You look fine. I was just gonna go clean some rooms. I like it better when you say debilitatingly cute. She gave a quick laugh as my eyes split wide. But the fluster is fun too. That's fine. If you don't mind, I'm gonna go quickly change, so perhaps we could meet here after you get done with the rooms? I was still just in shock. How the hell did she just read my mind? That is, of course, unless you're cleaning my room. She cocked her head, eyes narrowing coyly. In which case, maybe that can wait till after. 2 questions, I paused. 1, what room are you in? And 2, what am I thinking of right now? Room 36, she laughed. Though I'm not supposed to tell you that, and you're not thinking anything right now, you're only thinking about asking that question, I'm guessing. Shit. She was right, I hadn't actually thought of anything. I'll talk to you soon, John, she giggled, turning around and walking off. I stood in silence for a brief period, my mind mulling over her words and trying to make sense of half of them. Every interaction with her felt so surreal. Not like she was crazy, but more just like things felt different around her. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I finally sighed, quickly carting to the first room and grabbing the cleaning supplies. The lights above me flickered. I finally sighed, quickly carting to the first room and grabbing the cleaning supplies. I wasn't sure how long it would take Haze to change, but she would definitely beat me if I wasn't fast. The first 3 rooms went by without a hitch, but as I hesitantly carted past room 36, hearing nothing but dead silence within, I couldn't help but think back to what Sylvia and Royce had talked about earlier. About Haze. Was there a way to bring those things up without accusing her? I wanted so badly to believe they weren't true. The next rooms went by fine as well up until the last 2. I was hastily changing out soap in the bathroom container when a knock suddenly sounded on the open door to the room. Housekeeping, I called out. So sorry, be done in a minute. Silence. Haze? I nervously called again. Is that... Why would you assume her? Sylvia laughed, peeking into the bathroom and smiling. You doing okay? Oh, I flinched, fumbling at the soap container before steadying it and trying to act casual. Yes, sorry. I don't know, I just have a constant fear she'll come back to harass me again, I guess. I'm doing fine. How'd the dishes go? She paused for a brief second as if this question was somehow unexpected. Good, I guess. She thought hard. Yeah, not too bad. Lovely, I nodded, screwing back on the soap cap and tossing it into the cart before beginning to make my way out of the bathroom. Sylvia stepped aside to make space, following as we made our way to the last room. Any problems? She continued as I fiddled with the key and finally swung the door open. Heater in 33 was busted last time I checked. No, I don't think so. I overturned the sheets of the bed, shrugging. I didn't check, but the room felt the same temperature as everything else. It's all seemed fine. Awesome, she nodded, walking over and doing the same to the other bed. That's good, I guess. Maybe Royce got to it. Probably. I moved back to the cart to grab the disinfectant spray. You waiting on the cart? Don't think I'd be helping you otherwise, she jeered with a smirk. We finished the rest of the room with surprising speed, closing the door behind us as I handed the keys to Sylvia. Cheryl said the elevator was a little shaky. I handed off the cart as well. When she brought the cart up here, but you probably won't die. Seeing as how I'll definitely die taking it down the stairs, she half laughed, half sighed. I think I'll take my chances. She suddenly paused as she turned around to cart it down the hallway. Oh, by the way, she spun slightly. After our shifts, Joyce, Chris, and... Her words drowned out in my head as the door to 36 down the hall suddenly rattled. My limbs froze, legs kicking into action as I immediately nodded and half pushed, half walked with Sylvia towards the elevator. Uh-huh, I nodded and picked up my pace, frantically seeing Haze emerge from the room. Right. Sylvia cocked an eyebrow, going to look where I was before I hastily brought back her attention by waving my arm for no reason. So, Joyce, Chris! I grinned through clenched teeth. Cool, what fantastic people! Right. She frowned. Okay. But anyway, as I was saying, if you wanted to come along after my shift in like 30 minutes, we're just... I would! I nodded excitedly, slamming the elevator button several times and practically shoving Sylvia and the cart inside as my toothy smile reached my ears. But I've kind of been feeling like death lately, getting a little sick, I think, I might just head to bed, but I'll let you know. Oh, okay? She was being thrown for a complete loop as I just smiled hysterically and prayed for the doors to close. I'm sorry, I hope you feel better soon.
Oh yeah, probably just a cold.
I nodded way too eagerly, reaching in and jamming the door close button.
Haha, no biggie. Have fun, you guys. I'll just be up here not doing anything you would disapprove of. Okay, wait, what?
She cocked her head.
What the heck are you talking about, Nat? Okay, talk to you tomorrow.
I waved, the doors closing on her confused expression.
Have a good one.
The elevator hummed with grinding gears, shuddering slightly as I heard it slowly descend.
Oh, Jesus.
I sighed, taking a second to curl over and catch my breath.
She doesn't like me.
Haze leaned against the railing behind me, startling me out of my skin. I whirled around before again having to catch my breath, putting my hand over my heart.
Oh, hey there.
Hey there, she repeated, cocking an eyebrow. She now wore something I'd never expected to see, a regular pink t-shirt and shorts. Her hair was still down, though now intentionally so, long and elegant. A small black puppy was printed on her shirt with the text, "Good boy," just below it in teal text. She still wore her high heels. For as quirky and frazzled as the outfit was, it still had a strange air of put together I couldn't imagine anyone else in the world pulling off. Her left hand slowly extended towards me as she grinned widely. In her delicate grasp were 2 Cheetos. Celebratory. She looked genuinely excited.
Go on, take one.
I tried to pick the same length.
These are some of the last pieces of food left in this place. This might just be the best Cheeto you've ever had. Alright.
I laughed.
Are you sure? I think there's maybe some food in the kitchen, perhaps, but I appreciate it. I love a good singular Cheeto on occasion.
I meant it to be a joke, but I quickly realized how seriously she was offering it to me, as if this really actually meant something to her. I quickly smiled, reaching and selecting one of the tiny orange lumps.
Thanks.
I nodded, looking at it in my hand.
What's the occasion, exactly?
You'll see. She gave a toothy grin, popping the Cheeto into her mouth and starting down the hallway to her room.
Come on.
I nervously followed, glancing at the Cheeto in my hand one more time before carefully putting it in my mouth. It tasted like a regular Cheeto. Upon entering her room, I was instantly greeted by a blast of cold, stagnant air, like something out of an office space. A printer beeped softly in the corner, several binders worth of paper loosely scattered around the central table in the common space. A small dog collar was lying crumpled atop a leather armchair. One of the rooms inside was clearly the governor's, a pressed suit lying unused atop his bed, which also seemed untouched, the covers pristine and unruffled. The other room, however, was a cluster of strange and unrelated items. Casual attire clothing lay discarded on the floor next to a sewing machine, baggy t-shirts, shorts and skirts, crop tops, you name it. Lining the closet and walls, however, were formal attire suits and technological anomalies looking like something out of a stereotypical 80s hacker room. Amidst these already strange outliers, a frighteningly disorganized tangle of yarn interwove between tacked-up pictures and the computer screens themselves. It truly looked like something out of a serial killer's paranoid dungeon. My heart squirmed with unease, my eyes flicking to see a shovel propped up against the far corner, a flash of blurriness showing its handle coated with blood, before my eyes readjusted to reveal it as nothing but regular wood.
Welcome.
Haze gestured around before wrapping up a Cheetos bag on the counter and placing it in the room's safe. I nervously tried to steal another glance into her room before she walked over to the door herself, opening it wide and grinning.
Better not go in here, she giggled. I'm a bit of a mess. Another secret between us.
The door closed slightly as I heard her rummaging through her room before reappearing with the clock in hand. She closed the door behind her as she walked back into the main space. She plopped onto the couch, lying down on her stomach across its entirety. She dropped the clock against the coffee table before looking up to me, gesturing to the other couch. "Come on," she nodded. "Now is when things get interesting." Sure." I began walking over slowly, still looking around the area and stealing another glance at Mr. Borden's room. Mr. Borden, he's not here. Ever." Haze rolled onto her back, holding up a piece of paper to the light before beginning to scribble on it with a marker. "You might be slowly figuring this out, but I'm actually alone, probably 97% of the time." "You do have your quirks." I nodded in light-hearted agreement, stiffly sitting on the couch opposite her. "I guess I'm slowly learning this." "Oh, it gets worse." She giggled to herself at my response, looking to me and smiling before sliding the paper down to the table. She moved the clock to sit on top of it. "So that's why the whole paranormal thingy?" I questioned, slowly leaning forwards to look at the paper. "To pass the time alone? Weren't you just at a fundraiser or whatever?" Scratched on the paper were the words, "Pattern item 14, the wind-up clock." There was more text beneath the clock itself, though I couldn't quite read it. "Well, that's usually how it goes," Haze laughed. "Alone forever until suddenly surrounded by people. Though creepy old men I'll never see again are never much company. Without getting too metaphysical on you here, John, do you really think you wouldn't feel alone in the presence of others? Even if no one remembered you?" This last question had a bitter taste to it. It seemed general enough, but the air chilled in a strange way, her eyes scanning my response. No, you're right, that would be lonely." I finally nodded carefully. No, that definitely sucks." "Well, first world problems, I suppose." She laughed with an air of fakeness I only remembered hearing when we had first talked at the rally. That clearly wasn't the answer she was looking for. "So, what exactly are we doing?" I tried to readjust my weight, looking at the clock. What's your plan here?" "Oh, we wait," she spoke, looking leisurely at the ceiling. "Paranormal stuff is kinda like fishing. Half the fun is not catching anything." "Alright, well, I like fishing, I guess." I nodded, looking around the room and sinking slightly further into the couch. "Are we, testing anything, though? What do you expect to happen? Is there, some history around this manor or something that, for some reason, I don't know about?" I looked again at the clock. It certainly seemed innocent enough. Its grungy, faded glass poorly reflected Haze's silver eyes as she looked at me and smiled. "If I tell you what I'm testing, it will throw the experiment off." She rolled back onto her stomach, holding out her hand and gesturing to mine. "Haven't you heard of confirmation bias?" I listened carefully, simultaneously extending my hand towards her, not exactly sure what she was going for. "Or the observer expectancy effect?" She grasped my hand delicately and gazed at my palm as if about to paint my nails. "If I tell you, for example, that the clock is a spirit box and vibrates when the departed try to communicate through it, you'll have a mental breakdown if the clock so much as shudders when I kick the table." "Right, looking for information to fit the hypothesis you gave." I nodded. Even if it doesn't quite fit, that's actually all I really remember from science fair. That's not what you're actually expecting though, right? The spirit box thing? "Oh no, of course not," she laughed, licking her pointer finger. "It will seem much more insignificant than that." She brought her finger to my hand, beginning to absent-mindedly scrub at the writing she had scrawled. I must escape.
Whoa, okay, didn't like the message after all? I had to sit awkwardly to extend my arm far enough. It was kinda sinister, after all. She paused for a second, before smiling and continued to scrub, glancing up to me. I just don't want you to be confused in the morning, she giggled. Maybe. What would you like instead? For a temporary tattoo? I pondered, unable to keep myself from smiling. I don't know. You an artist? I kinda like jellyfish. You would, she beamed, nearly yanking me off the couch as she pulled my arm closer, uncapping a pen on the table with her mouth and getting to work diligently. What a weird animal to like. I waited for several seconds before trying to steal a glance. I nearly felt my bones break, her eyes narrowing to snake-like sickles as she snapped my wrist towards her. Get out of town, she hissed, tongue sticking out slightly as she quickly got back to work, and I felt the pen lightly carving against my skin. I laughed to myself. And there. She finally made an overzealous final stroke before her expression rose in sheer joy and she grasped my hand harder with both hands. I think I'm getting good at this. Best one yet. Her hands slowly loosened their grip and I formed a confused smile before turning my hand towards myself and stifling an excited laugh. It was just short of a kindergartner's scribblings, a single half circle with 3 wiggly lines jutting out below. She had worked at it for nearly 2 straight minutes. Oh, that's amazing, I giggled. It's so cute. She beamed, proudly shrugging. I looked at it closer and smiled as she took several more seconds to relish the moment, before her face fell slightly, her eyes flicking away. I'm having fun right now. She spoke slowly, making me look up from the jellyfish as if there was a big but coming. Right, I grinned. I mean, yeah, me too. But... Well, I don't want to confuse you again by doing something weird. She looked trapped. I don't want to ruin this, but, I mean... She sighed, shoulders slumping slightly. Listen, she breathed carefully, looking extremely uncomfortable in her vulnerability. Let me preface this by saying this isn't as sad or lame as it sounds, and I'm praying you'll understand that soon. But the fact is, you're the first friend I've had in a long time. I was unsure of how to respond to this. I partially opened my mouth to say something, but she wasn't done. I talked about how alone I felt in my daily life. She continued slowly. It's so much worse now. I don't know how much longer I can take it, but it was always pretty bad. I just didn't necessarily realize it before, but I still acted out, still did things I regret every day. Things I know I'm being punished for. Hey, whoa. I tried to interject, completely thrown by this. It's okay. What are you... Everyone hated me for the things I did. She just shook her head as if knowing I would miss the mark if I said anything. But I still liked it. I loved it because they were talking about me. Her eyes flashed to me, as if holding me as some ghost of Christmas past. I know you want to ask me. She now wouldn't release my gaze. About the rumors about me, whether I lied about things, whether I'm as bad as they say.
I wasn't, I shook my head. It doesn't really... Yes, you were. She barely even gave my words a passing thought. Unfortunately, you can't lie to me. I know what you're going to say before you do. And it's okay. It doesn't matter to me much anymore, but it should to you. You should want to know. She fidgeted softly, uncapping and recapping the pen. It's all true. She spoke to the floor, her eyes staring at her heels. Everyone hates me, and I am pathetic. I've been alone my whole life. I went to private school, but the teachers were too afraid to fail me, and the students were too afraid to assume they could talk to me. So naturally, I started making things up so people would have to talk to me. She sighed before half shrugging and looking back up to me. It got worse the further in I dug myself. She spoke as if presenting an argument. My initial cry for attention and sympathy when I was a kid soon became attention for the wrong reasons when I got older and people realized I had been lying, but to me it didn't really matter. I would take anything over the loneliness, and soon I was almost expected to have a new scandal every week. People love to hate me, and I love to be on people's minds. The manor creaked silently, not a single sound penetrating Haze's confession as she now sat quietly. Her eyes appeared calm, but I could tell she was having difficulty maintaining her gaze. So that's my understanding of myself I've come to, she finally finished off. That's the whole story. I have nothing else to say in defense. I hope I answered any questions you might have. I stuttered, blindsided by this. Oh, also, I'm sorry, she quickly intercut. I know it may not have personally affected you, but it may still sway your decision to know that I do realize what I did was wrong, that my own personal problems don't justify wrong behavior. I was silent for several more seconds, watching her again almost interject before thinking better of it and simply waiting nervously. Whew, I finally spoke slowly. First off, I appreciate you being so open, and you have a weirdly good ability to look at your own flaws, so, thanks for being so honest with me out of nowhere. That can't be easy. She blinked cautiously. She looked like she was at a judge hearing, hands folded neatly but nervously in front of her. But, and maybe I should feel bad about this, I continued, saying the words as I found them. But I didn't really care about that. The bad things, when people told me. You seemed alright to me. You still seem great to me, and you've never been anything but nice to me, so... I don't know, is that weird? I can't really forgive you for things you did to other people, but I can still be your friend, right? I personally like you. Her eyes had a blank look as I could almost see the gears churning, letting out a lot of line and fighting to reel back in a response. Right? That's fine, right? I tried to help her out, but was almost more so talking to myself. It'd be like if your best friend was actually a murderer the whole time. You'd feel really weird and conflicted, but, if they were always nice to you... Okay, wait. Sorry, that's a bad example. You should probably call the police anyway. But, it sounds like you were just a scared kid who kind of dug yourself into a hole and let, the media attention get to them, and... what kid isn't a giant douche liar? Right? I was, just most of them don't get broadcast on TV. Forget the earlier metaphor. It doesn't matter. None of it matters. I believe that you're sorry. I mean, that's a dick move to people who actually have leukemia, for example, but I just can't hate you. I'm having fun with you, and maybe it's selfish of me, but that's really all I care about. That, and, I mean, probably don't do stuff like that again, obviously. I mean, are you okay? I guess I forgive you. It doesn't matter to me. Haze's eyes looked at me, and if she was capable of showing true emotion, I imagine there might have been something groundbreaking there. And indeed, there might have been. A true smile brighter than anything she felt comfortable expressing, cancelled out by guilt, may have been exactly what I was looking at, as she simply looked at me straight-faced and nodded slowly. After a strangely long and even more strangely comfortable period of eye contact, I finally looked back down to the jellyfish on my hand. So, I guess that's everything on my end. I slowly put out my hand for the pen. I don't really know where that puts us, but would you like an animal as well? I don't know if I can make it something quite as good as this beauty, but I'm willing to give it a shot. Naturally, she smiled, slowly placing her hand into the one I had extended for the pen, before suddenly looking as though she had been shot and lurching back. I flinched as well, watching her nervously read my reaction between frantic eye darts to her wrists as she again licked her finger and scrubbed furiously at her own skin. She did this to both her wrists. Sorry, she tried to save face as her fingers smudged with black ink. I write notes to myself, motivational quotes, checklists, things I won't say that are way more embarrassing than either of those two examples. She flushed before grinning and lowering her hand back into mine. No need for you to see that, she snickered, pressing the pen into my other hand and leaning over the table uncomfortably far before frowning. She huffily blew a wisp of hair from her face before half rolling, half crawling over the table, the clock shuddering beneath her. Oh, okay, alright, I laughed, moving aside as she slumped beside me. What do you want? Jellyfish as well? Pacific sea nettle are pretty cool looking, actually. Dragon. Her eyes lit up, smile reaching her ears. A big old toothy one. Make it eating a lion. Alright. I chuckled, cocking my head and turning her hand a few different directions. I'm not exactly sure if there's enough room for... It can be a small lion, she shrugged. So long as the dragon is big comparatively. Her eyes sunk slightly then, fingers curling. And thank you, she muttered almost under her breath, face flushing. Thanks for saying all that. No problem, really. I smiled before squinting my eyes. I cautiously put the pen to her skin and nervously started an arc. Here we go. I can't say I've drawn a dragon in a while. I think you got it. Haze just pressed closer. And don't look now, but your so-called broken clock is ticking again. What? I went to move my head before she physically put her other hand up to block my view. Dragon first, she pressed, though her eyes remained fixed on the table. It's not going anywhere. Yet? Okay, alright. I sped up considerably, her intense focus making me nervous. I watched her eyes dart from the table to the front door and then back again. Just what was she waiting for? I trailed the dragon's tail down onto her wrist before my pen stopped dead on her flesh. Where she had smudged away, I could still faintly make out the faintest of shapes. It wasn't writing. It was a drawing of a jellyfish, Pacific sea nettle.
Victory Cheeto fulfillment any second now. Haze just brimmed with excitement, not meeting my gaze as I looked up to her in confusion. Her eyes were now flat out staring at the front door. She didn't even break to blink. I shrugged off the faded drawing, narrowing my eyes slightly as I scribbled in little blood drips coming from the limp lion in the dragon's mouth and hastily finished up the rest. "All right," I breathed out with the last line, actually smiling slightly at how it turned out. "The poor little lion didn't stand a chance." Haze finally broke her gaze from the front door as she lifted up her hand, and I finally used the opportunity to gaze at the clock. Sure enough, the second hand trembled around the dial, looking like some sort of mechanical zombie. "Fucking awesome," Haze giggled, poking at the ink and grinning widely. "Holy hell, this is actually really excellent." "Aw, thanks," I flushed. "I'm useless in most other aspects, but, you know." "Okay, maybe it needs some time alone." Haze gazed back to the clock and then the door. I was so certain this was the one. We might be stopping the pattern from completing by being in here." Her eyes actually seemed to deepen in worry with that last sentence. "Come on, let's take a walk." She jumped up with a smile, whirling around and extending her hand to me. "And I don't think you're useless. But you're gonna have to fish for better compliments than that if you want me to go further." "That wasn't..." I frowned, then laughed as I grabbed her hand and she yanked me up with frightening strength. "That wasn't fishing for compliments, for the record. I was saying that genuinely." "As was I," she grinned, making her way to the door. "I'm just saying, if you're baiting me, might as well go for broke and say something ballsy like, 'Oh man, Haze would never be interested in me, she's Her words died out as I grabbed up the clock and we both stopped dead, for entirely different reasons. My mind was racing over her words, going a mile a minute. What the hell? What, was she making fun of me, or? Haze, instead, seemed to fall into a shattering realization. "You," she slowly spoke, backing out of the door carefully. "You're the pattern." A sudden sound softly echoed from a distant place as if in a dream. It sounded almost like a howl. Haze paled beyond ghost white, pointed finger landing directly on the clock in my hand, my eyes flashing down to it in confusion. Wait, why had I even picked that up? "It didn't complete because I changed you." She looked like she was going to be sick before immediately recollecting her thoughts. Okay, I'm sorry, John, I'm going to leave you alone for a bit now. Sorry, don't follow me." With that, she slammed the door. The lights above me flickered. "Don't follow me." With that, she slammed the door. The slightest trail of blood ran down my arm as several divots softly formed. I didn't notice. What the hell had just happened? It was so damn impossible to put a finger on Haze. There was almost, at this point, certainly something wrong with her mentally. I had no idea what affliction would cause these weird, psychotic bouts of detachment from reality, but she seemed so normal 80% of the time. What kind of... Shouldn't there have been some indication that something was wrong even during normal conversations with her? Instead, it was like a light switch being turned off and on. I looked down at the clock in my hand, going to place it back down on the paper before seeing the text that had been previously covered up by the clock itself.
There should be a metal wind-up clock from room 12 on top of this sheet of paper. It read in impeccable handwriting. If there is not, pattern cycle 2 has started. Return to B5. What the? My eyes flashed back to the closed door of her room, remembering the jumble of strings and similarly styled papers that had been lining the walls. I nearly took a step towards it before stopping myself, hesitating and looking at the clock in my hands again. Jesus Christ, this was crazy. There was something seriously wrong here, something seriously wrong with Haze. Maybe I should check if she was truly staying alone here, obsessed with these delusional patterns or whatever. Just how far off the edge was she? Was she going to be a danger to herself? I shakily stepped forward, not even sure if I had convinced myself I was doing it for a noble cause or was just too damn curious. Her door loomed ahead, my hand softly resting on the cold knob. I swung the door open. It was the same way I remembered from my glances. Countless paper scraps sourced from the living room making up strange letters and numbers, some connected by red string, others blank with large question marks beside them with sticky notes. Some string paths extended to several computer screens taped to the glass itself, though the monitors were off. The ramblings extended to the ceiling above, several pages of seemingly important documents folded into makeshift origami to spell large letters directly above the bed. Start with A1. My stomach churned. What was I looking at exactly? How had she physically set up this much garbage in just a day and a half? This setup looked like it took years. I looked around the room to finally catch the combination A1 physically scratched above the left wall. Everything seemed to be cataloged like this. Look for patterns. Do not break. Was written in more large letters above A1, countless sketches and pages of writing apparently strung together to point out what I could only assume were whatever pattern she was talking about. I went to investigate further before something on her dresser caught my eye. E17 was written above a duplicate of the paper out in the living room. There should be a metal wind-up clock from room 12 on top of this sheet of paper. It read in the same handwriting. If there is not, return to B5. However, a sticky note on top of this read, Testing item, cycle day 2, 130. My eyes flashed up to the ceiling, rapidly locating B5 scrawled on the rafters. My horror quickly grew as I tried to make sense of the nonsense below it. Pattern item 14, the wind-up clock, headed the sheet of paper. This was one of the few items connected by the red string, although a large question mark was sticky noted beside it as well. Origin location, room 12. This wind-up clock will stop the night of cycle day 2 pattern at 2:38 in the morning. Normal mode of location change, pattern character 12 to pattern character 4 at 5:30. Clock spends cycle day 2 in pattern character 4's workshop before being returned to pattern completion at 3 p.m. Another sheet of paper was tacked on below the question mark sticky note. Test 1, it read. The wind-up clock is a possible contender for the key. I will remove the clock from pattern character 12's possession prior to transfer. Pattern should account for change and return item to original location to restart day 2 cycle. Which pattern character will facilitate this, and if they are unsuccessful, will day 1 cycle start, or will the pattern be broken? I don't think this is a good idea. A note beside this drew an arrow to the text in the exact same handwriting. Let pattern character 12 return to origin after checking for key. Impossible. Another note from the same author corrected this. Other side effects are yet to be discovered, but minimal transfer of item results in strong pattern change. Pattern item 14 is very likely to contain key, but retrieving it likely means breaking pattern. I must choose if I can proceed. Damage may have already been done. I blinked slowly, eyes narrowing in nothing but concern. Was this really all Haze? Was she so sick, writing to herself? The clock felt heavy in my hand, faintly ticking beneath my fingers. This was messed up beyond what I could comprehend. I couldn't understand these ramblings any more than I wanted to, but at the very least she was defacing the walls of the room in her apparent hysteria. This was really getting out of hand. Someone needed to be told about this. This couldn't go on. I had to find her. As my hand landed on the doorknob of her room, I realized that her side of the door was layered with countless scratches. More than I could count, like someone had tried to claw their way out. Space, not time, was written in the center. I shivered. Upon exiting, the manor was cold and dead, lobby empty and lightless. Whatever patrons may have been there seemed altogether absent. The lights above shimmered slightly. A speck of blood dotted my shoe as I walked, it barely registering in my mind that my arm had begun to bleed yet again. Thankfully, Aunt Cheryl was sitting in the middle of the lobby behind a pile of suitcases, turning around at my approach. Her lonely form was out of place and haunting in the darkness, her paper-pale skin almost appearing gray if it weren't for the ghastly tear marks beginning to leave her midsection to spill gore to the ground. Her crusted eyes were ringed with dead black, her tired gaze filled with death. 3 nights is what Mr. Borden's agent said. She looked like she was trying to remember, mouth unhinged as if broken. But you can't tell anyone that, okay? Huh? What? I slowly came to a stop, limbs faltering as I felt a weight relieve itself from my right side. Oh, right. I mean, security reasons, I guess, probably. I sighed. Well, it's a big manor, lots of rooms with lots of different people. I'll be fine, unless I'm cleaning her room. My arm slopped to the ground with a loud squelch, stretched elastic skin splitting like ribbons at the bite mark. Maybe, maybe not. Cheryl grinned a smile that ruptured past her broken face before jutting to her feet as her phone went off. Yes? She answered hastily. Her torso began to slide from her lacerated midsection, massive bite marks like a great white shark revealing themselves as blood speckled to the floor. The dead skin of her wrist flayed like paper in the wind, her ghastly bones breaking through the rotting flesh. Phone not even in her hand as she walked towards her front door and haphazardly waved me goodbye. It's about time. Yes, of course there's a lot of luggage. Yes, I need both of you. I breathed a sigh, walking heavily up the master staircase to the 2nd floor. I took a few seconds to marvel at the massive glass chandelier dangling precariously above the lobby, as I did every time I walked up the steps. Today, its grand, elegant form appeared. particularly mocking. The clock in my pocket ticked softly. A knock on my door woke me with painful difficulty. My eyes groggily opened with searing pain as I checked my phone. 5 o'clock. It wasn't even light out yet. I had probably slept less than an hour.
Come on,
Aunt Cheryl prompted from the other side of the door.
You already had your day off, mister. Let's get to it.
Sorry. I rubbed my eyes, sitting up and wincing. My alarm, the clock stopped running.
Take it to Royce, she responded. Once you've had some breakfast, your schedule's on the service counter.
Right. I nodded to my empty room. Thanks, Cheryl.
Sure thing, she cheered. I'm talking to contractors all day today, so if you or anyone else needs me, you'll have to wait until after 6 or just text me.
Gotcha, I responded, heavily swinging my legs off the bed and getting to my feet.
See you later then.
Her footsteps receded away from the door, and the sounds quickly muted away as my eyes caught my bedsheets, slush coursing through my veins. Blood. The sheets were splotched with a dark brown rust, almost green in color, it was so decayed. I frantically checked myself, seeing nothing out of place anywhere on my body. My heart rate quickened further, but with changing my clothes, it became clear that none of the substance was on me. Was it perhaps just some kind of bleach stain from when the sheets were washed? Taking all of my willpower to convince myself that the stains had always been there, and that I would investigate more later, I jammed a toothbrush in my mouth and hurriedly searched my winter coat. It looked cold out today. The towering mountains daunting the manor were being choked out by gray mist, a light, constant drizzle tapping fingers at the glass of my window. Just as I found my coat, another knock sounded at my door.
Yeah?
I spoke as I took the bulky swath of fabric off its hanger and frantically recovered my bed to hide the stains.
I'm almost there. Sorry I'm late. Slept in a bit too long.
The other side of the door was silent. I frowned, having expected it to be one of my family members. I quickly threw the coat on and shoved my gardening gloves into the pocket. I spun around at the last second to also grab the broken clock before putting my hand on the door and freezing. It was layered with scratches, as if something had tried to claw its way out. But that wasn't quite it. They were almost more like tick marks. I opened the door, meaning to immediately get the person outside's opinion before my heart staggered to a stop. Haze stood just beyond the threshold, hands carefully clasped in front of her. Her hair was tied back, glimmering earrings dangling softly by her pale neck. She seemed strangely comfortable in her pink dress, the design some weird mix of skimpy and business formal that almost made it appear like she was getting ready for an awkward high school prom. She smiled at my approach, quickly stepping forward to greet me.
I'm gravely sorry, she spoke.
Please excuse my rudeness, Mr. Matthews, but I have a slight favor to ask if you wouldn't mind. I blinked slowly, wondering how the hell she knew my name until I glanced down at the name tag on my uniform and winced.
Oh,
I shook my head. You're not interrupting at all, Miss Borden. Sorry, I thought you were someone else.
Oh, please,
she laughed. It's Haze. I gather you work here?
Oh, absolutely,
I nodded, trying to make up for before by giving this conversation everything I had. I do general service around the manor. What can I do for you, Haze? You look great, by the way. What's the occasion?
Shit. Was it okay to say she looked great? Beautiful? Stunning? Was that weird to say to someone like her? Holy shit, she was attractive. That was just an objective fact. Should I not have mentioned her physical appearance at all? Fuck. I appreciate that. She laughed warmly. Now, do you mean that in a politically correct way, or do you actually find me attractive? My words turned to ash in my throat as it closed up. I gagged. I mean... Just messing with you. She tilted her head and grinned. I've just always been curious at that part. You seem to have difficulty saying what you want to. Holy shit, and you remembered me, I wilted. From the rally? Oh, goddammit. Well, of course. She laughed a bit too hard. That's always the fun part. I don't think you know what fun part means, I joked to mask my nervousness. No, really, she shook her head. That was a blast compared to what usually happens. It's nice to just talk with someone occasionally, refreshing to see someone so honest. Honestly inept at politics, maybe? I laughed. I googled Bill 47A, but don't worry about debating points with me. I only googled enough to know what the heck it even is. Let's please talk about something else. I like that plan. She giggled, but seemed to actually hesitate with her next words. What exactly do you need? I followed up for her. I'm more than happy to help, especially now that I'm not petrified of you thinking I'm a horrible blotch on planet Earth. Right, her lips pursed. Well, that's just it, actually. The request is rather strange. I'm sorry if it seems out of line. Oh, not at all, I'm sure. I shook my head. Absolutely anything I can do for you. I would like to break that clock of yours, she continued, softly gesturing to it. If you don't mind, of course. I paused, not even realizing I had been bracing for impact. My clock? I echoed, glancing down to it in confusion, nearly going to hand it to her immediately before I realized what she was saying. Why the heck would she want to do that? Oh, this? I cocked an eyebrow. I mean, I guess, well, obviously I would prefer if you didn't, though, but you can. Is there a reason? It actually stopped working last night. Oh? She cocked her head, taking a peek at my room number before smiling. Sorry to hear that. I guess, if I tell you my reason, will you promise not to laugh? Sure. I quickly straightened back up. I guess? I'm not really sure what to expect. Oh, actually, she suddenly paused. As much as I enjoy this conversation and variations of it, I wanted to try something else with you. Again, it may seem strange, but it might be helpful. Sure. Wait, what? I tensed, unable to keep myself from backing up. She approached way too close for comfort. What did you just say? And what exactly are you planning on? You have my pen, she spoke softly, pointing to where a pant pocket may have been on her dress. My eyebrows cocked, my hand moving to mirror her movement and check my pant pocket. I reached inside with growing confusion to produce a small black ink ballpoint pen. You'll rot here, she whispered softly, tone shifting to something completely out of nowhere. If you forget everything, remember this: you can be conscious without breaking it. Her forehead clacked against mine as she looked down and grabbed my hand. A pen in her grasp rapidly scratched across the back of my palm. I must escape.